Good afternoon, this is Stephanie from Crochetverse at crochetverse.com. I wanted to provide a quick to-the-point video on how to do C2C or corner-to-corner crochet. This goes along with my sunshine on a cloudy day calming blanket. It's made out of the Bernat blanket yarn, so it's nice and heavy and cozy, and my children find it very calming. So I am going to show you my method of corner-to-corner crochet. First step is to slip knot your yarn onto your hook. I am going to begin by chaining 5. You will see some people chain 6 to begin, and you will see some people chain 5 to begin. I prefer the 5 chain method than the 6. I believe it makes a tighter square and a better looking finished project. Once you chain your 5, you're going to work a normal double crochet into your 3rd chain from the hook. Then also double crochet in those 2 remaining chains. This is considered your first block of corner to corner. Now each row will add 1 additional block onto your work as you increase. You will again chain 5. Each new row will begin with chaining 5. And again, as before, we will double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. Then the next 2 as well, to finish creating our single block of corner to corner. Now, this single block here is our row 1. We are working on row 2, so we are going to need to end up with 2 blocks on our 2nd row. All of the blocks that are worked after the first get worked into the space created by your turning chain. In this case, it was created by skipping the chains when we worked our first double crochet on the first block. To access that, you need to take your block that you made first and flip it. Easy as that. Now, slip stitch into the space created by skipping chains when you made your first block. Just slip stitch through. Now, here is the 2 of the 5 and 2 method of corner to corner crochet. Some people will chain 3 here to count as their first double crochet. I prefer chaining 2. Again, I believe it makes a tighter looking block and a nicer finished project. In the same space, we need to finish creating the block, and we will do that by working 3 additional double crochets into the block. At this point, you have this. The first row has 1 block. The 2nd row has 2 blocks. Now we'll begin to work on our 3rd row, which will have 3 blocks. And again, to start every new row, we simply begin by chaining 5. Turning our work. You will always double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook and the next 2. Each block then, in essence, is made up of 4 double crochets. The first one created by either skipping the 2 chains or chaining 2. To work each subsequent block, you must get to the chain space of the next block in line. Look here. This is row 1, this is row 2, and we are working row 3. This space right here is where the next block will be worked, but we have to slip stitch into that first. So that means insert the hook right there. Let me show you that one more time. This is the increase block made by chaining 5 when we turned. This here is where we insert our hook to make the next block. And again, you just slip stitch into that space. We need to chain 2 and then again work 3 double crochets into the same space to finish creating the block. Now we have 2 of the 3 needed for row 3. Again, go to the next block, insert your hook in the chain space. That is right there. It's always going to be the one up on the top of the block, and it's always going to be into the space, and you're always going to slip stitch into that. So we're slipping into that, and again chaining 2 and finishing the block by working 3 double crochets into the block. Now let's check our work. Row 1 has 1 block, row 2 has 2 blocks, and sure enough, row 3 has 3 blocks. We're going to do one more row increasing, and then I will move on to the decrease method. To begin your next row, again, it is chaining 5. Turning our work, double crocheting into the 3rd chain from the hook and the next 2 chains. That there is our increase block. Now we move to the next block, space at the top. Each block kind of lays upon the block that it preceded. See how that works? So I'm going to insert my hook right into this space, slip stitching, chaining 2, double crocheting 3 additional times to finish the block. Again, that block here will lay nice and snug against the next block, and you're going to slip stitch into the next chain space at the top of the next block. Slip stitch, chain 2, working 3 double crochets to complete our block. And we are on row 4, so we are going to end up with 4 blocks, and so far we have 1, 2, and 3. The final one will be made right here. Slip stitch into that space, chaining 2, finishing our block by 3 double crochets. When you make a corner to corner, in the method I have used for my blanket, it is going to be a perfect square. If you can see here, these are the sides of our blanket. This is the first row we created. Row 2 has 2 blocks, row 3 has 3 blocks, row 4 has 4 blocks. Now we need to, if you look at the blanket like this, you can see that if we were making a square, we have half of it done. This is our midway point. Now we'll start by showing you how to decrease. What we want to do is have this be the beginning of our finishing to create the square of the blanket. So now we are not increasing. So we do not chain 5 to turn. Instead, we chain 1 and just turn our work over. Now, you'll see on the top of the block here, the stitches. You want to slip stitch up the side. Again, look at this in this whole fashion. Slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch into the space. That way we're not increasing our row, we're beginning to decrease. So we'll begin that by slip stitching across each stitch up the side of the block on the edge. This is the beginning of how to decrease. When you get to that space where you work your block, simply again chain 2 and work 3 more double crochets in the space to complete the block. Now we'll work the rest of the row as normal. Again, now here, the next place to work is here. Slip stitch into that space, chain your normal 2, and then make 3 more double crochets into the space to finish the block. Move to the next one. Again, slip stitch into that space, chain 2, finish the block with 3 double crochets into the space. Now we are going to end our row by simply slip stitching into the last stitch. You're going to see now that we have row 1, 1 block, row 2, 2 blocks, row 3, 3 blocks, and row 4 with 4 blocks. This here is the midpoint of our blanket. Then we began to decrease. The fifth row only has 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. That was done by, instead of chaining 5, you just slip stitched up the box and worked your first block of the next row in the space. And at the end, you just slip stitched into that final box without working another block into this. Okay, so now we have 3 blocks on the row. If we continue to decrease, we're going to have 2 blocks on the next row. Again, we do that by just chaining 1 and turning the work. We need to slip stitch up the edge block of the previous row into the first space. Slip stitch 1, 2, 3, and then into the space. Chaining 2 again, and completing 3 more double crochets into the space to complete the block. Lay that one snugly and move to the next space right here. Slip stitch into that, chain 2, and 3 more double crochets in the space to complete the box. And now on the decrease rows, we simply slip stitch into the chain space on the last block to end the row. Now you'll know that you see here, we're almost done creating a square. Each row increased to the middle where we had 4, and then we decreased back down to 3, decreased back down to 2. Our final block here is going to decrease you back down to 1 and complete your square. We're going to do that by chaining 1, turning the work, slip stitching up the first block into the space, chaining 2, completing the block by working 3 double crochets into the space and slip stitching to the space. And voila, you now have a perfect square. This is how you increase and decrease to make a square piece of corner-to-corner work, also known as C2C. For the blanket that I did, the calming blanket, I changed colors, but I did not want to have any color changes mid-row. I only color changed at the ends of the rows, so I want to real fast show you how I did that. So I'm going to peel back here and come back to the decreasing row. So I'm going to say that this is the row where we wanted to have a change for the next row. You can find that pattern at www.crochetverse.com and then search for the calming blanket or sunshine on a cloudy day, and it'll bring you to that. So now I'm just going to cut the yarn for this. If you were changing colors mid-row, you would join the new yarn on the last or slip stitch of the previous block. But since there's no mid-row color changes, the way that I did this is I just cut my yarn, ended it off, flipped it over, and then when I wanted to bring in my new color, I began by slip stitching into the space I would have slip stitched to if I had not changed colors. So this is where I would have worked my first block if I had not changed colors, but I'm just going to join my new color in that spot. Chain 2, work 3 double crochets in the space to complete the block, and then move to the next space, slip stitch in, chain 2, 3 double crochets into the same space, and to end that row of decrease, just slip stitch right into there. Now for the final one, we'll just go ahead and complete it. Chain 1. We need 1 square to finish off our square piece of corner-to-corner work. We're going to slip stitch up the side of this block, slip stitch into the first space, chain 2, finish the block by working 3 double crochets into the space, and then simply slip stitch to the next. Now you can see where I changed colors. It's a little easier to visualize that way. Row 1 has 1, 2 has 2, 3 has 3, and 4 has 4. That was all increasing. The 4 is the midpoint of our blanket. Then we decreased back down with 3 blocks, 2 blocks, 1 block, and we have a square. This is your square method of corner to corner crochet, changing colors at the end of a row, not the midway point. I hope that you found that useful. If you have any questions, just leave a comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, join me on my Facebook page at www.facebook.com/crochetverse. CROCHETVERSE. Thank you again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.